Today on NewsWatch, Mideast meltdown. Tensions escalate between Saudi Arabia and Iran, leaving some to wonder, is war on the horizon? Plus, this Muslim man loved to challenge Christians about their beliefs until his own crisis of faith and a series of dreams changed everything. And breaking bad habits, what it really takes to get your life on the right track. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Caitlin Burke. New tensions are escalating in the Middle East. It comes after Saudi Arabia executed a prominent cleric, inflaming Shiite Muslims around the world. Now the Saudis and Iran have cut diplomatic ties as the divide between the two Islamic powers grows deeper. As Gary Lane reports, some wonder if it could lead to a war between the two rivals.
Shia Muslims around the world staged protests. This one turned violent in Kashmir, India. Others, like this one in Beirut, Lebanon, were more sedate. But the message was clear. Saudi Arabia's execution of prominent Shiite Muslim cleric Nimr al-Nimr was a crime against humanity. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah condemned the execution, saying the Saudi monarchy is a terrorist dictatorship. But the biggest protest occurred in Tehran, Iran, where demonstrators stormed and set fire to the Saudi embassy.
Allah has promised to get revenge over spilled blood of the innocent. When time passes, the House of Saud will certainly understand that al-Nimr's blood will catch up with those who executed him.
Others set fire to an American flag and said they believe the House of Saud will be overthrown by ISIS or Islamic countries. Iranian President Rouhani denounced the execution, calling it anti-Islamic and anti-human. An Iranian government judicial spokesman said some of those who stormed the Saudi embassy have been arrested and jailed. Saudi Arabia announced the execution of Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr on Saturday. He was killed along with 46 others, including Saudi dissidents and members of al-Qaeda. The Iranians say the Saudis executed the sheikh because he was an outspoken critic of the monarchy and called for human rights for Saudi Arabia's Shiite minority. The Saudis say he was a terrorist who advocated violence and the overthrow of the monarchy. So what might all this mean for the United States and the rest of the world? For now, it may mean peace efforts to end the Saudi and Iranian proxy wars in Syria and Yemen will likely stall.
The Iranians will probably go beyond rhetoric, intensifying their support to Houthi rebels in Yemen and perhaps even trying to foment protests and insurgencies, perhaps even in Bahrain, among the Shia majority there, against the Sunni king, and in Saudi Arabia in the Al-Hassa province.
As Muslim clerics attended Nimr al-Nimr's funeral this past weekend, the White House released a statement condemning his execution. President Obama chose not to comment on escalating Middle East tensions as he and his family returned to Washington from their Hawaii vacation. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Communities in Mississippi and Illinois are assessing the damage from the deadly winter flooding that hit the states over the New Year's weekend. 25 people are dead after the Mississippi River rose to historic levels, fueled by more than 13 inches of rain over a 3-day period. And while water is starting to recede in most areas affected by the flooding, some locations along the Mississippi are still rising. Residents of Shelby County in Tennessee are preparing to evacuate if necessary.
I was here in 2011 when the water levels were really high. Just make sure your insurance is up to and paid for, and you just kind of prepare for the worst.
Flooding is expected to worsen as the rising waters head downriver to Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and other southern states. And cleanup efforts are expected to take weeks, if not months. A week ago, 9 tornadoes tore across Dallas, Texas, killing 11 people and destroying or damaging hundreds of homes. The dean of the communications school at Regent University is just one of many who lost their homes. The good news, Operation Blessing was there to help. Heather Sells has the latest.
The Dallas tornadoes blasted the communities of Rowlett and Garland with winds up to 200 miles an hour. They decimated hundreds of homes and damaged others. Regent University Dean Mitch Land is grateful most in his community were not harmed, including 22 family members in his home.
The majority of the people in this devastated area of Rowlett and Garland survived. It's amazing how few are hurt physically. Now, emotionally, everybody's hurt. Everybody's hurt. Everybody's wounded.
The tornado struck the day after Christmas, and then the rains began, further destroying Land's home.
There was at least 2 inches of water throughout the house, so all the hardwood, all the carpet, all that stuff completely ruined. We know and realize that that's just stuff, and it doesn't matter what it costs, it's all stuff.
For the last week, the humanitarian nonprofit Operation Blessing has been working in Rowlett and Garland. It has sent more than 2,000 volunteers to Land's home and others. They've helped victims salvage their belongings, clear debris, and set up tarps to protect home interiors for now. Diane Drain admitted he had some trouble accepting help from Operation Blessing because he's normally the one to give it. He has served in multiple disasters on the Texas Baptist Men's Chainsaw team.
To see people in need and to help them is natural and comfortable for me, but to be on this end it's new territory. It's not comfortable.
Operation Blessing focuses not just on the physical, but on survivors' emotional and spiritual needs as well. Volunteers take time to hear people's stories and pray with them. Land says the ministry has profoundly blessed his family.
This brings us to tears. It makes us just weep because of the care and the love and kindness that we feel. It's almost worth going through it just because Operation Blessing cares for us.
Heather Sell, CBN News.
President Obama is kicking off the new year with plans to crack down on America's gun rights. He's doing it with executive action since he hasn't been able to convince Congress to approve new gun restrictions. The president's measures include expanded background checks on gun sales and forcing more sellers to register as federally licensed gun dealers. The changes would be aimed at those who sell through gun shows, online, or in formal settings. Other moves include beefing up inspections of licensed dealers. Armed protesters angry at the federal government took control of a national wildlife refuge in Oregon this weekend. Behind the siege are Nevada ranchers Eamon and Cliven Bundy. They were involved in a standoff with the federal government back in 2014 over grazing rights. This latest incident is over a prison sentence for ranchers Dwight and Stephen Hammond. They initially went to jail for 90 days for setting fires on federal land. Now the government wants them to serve out full 5-year sentences.
It is the duty of the people to put that government back in its place.
The Bundys and other militiamen say they're prepared to stay as long as necessary. The feds say the Hammonds were convicted of arson and that their sentence is justified. Turning now to Israel, 4 days after a shocking terror attack in Tel Aviv, police are still searching for the perpetrator, believed to be an Israeli Arab. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell has that story.
The assailant opened fire with an automatic weapon on Israelis celebrating a birthday at a Tel Aviv restaurant on Friday. He killed 2 and wounded several others before escaping. Family members recognized Nishat Milhem from closed-circuit footage that aired in news reports. Here he's seen shopping just before the attack. Then he pulls out his gun and starts to shoot. In an unusual move, Milhem's family reported his identity to police. Members of the Israeli Arab community expressed their sorrow over the attack, and Milhem's father extended his condolences to the families of the victims. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the site of the attack, which he called a despicable murder.
Among Muslim citizens of Israel, there are many who speak out against violence and want full law enforcement in their communities. Everyone knows there is wild incitement by Islamic extremists against Israel in the Arab sector, incitement in mosques, incitement in the education system, and incitement on social media. We are acting aggressively against that incitement.
Tel Aviv is on high alert as security forces continue to hunt for the terrorist. Parents reluctantly sent their children to school in Tel Aviv after the weekend.
We have known larger events than this, more devastating, and we have always bounced back because that is how we are in Tel Aviv, Yafo, and in Israel.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, you've heard the phrase, drop it like a bad habit, but that's easier said than done. Up next, we'll show you why some habits stick and others don't, so stay tuned. It's a new year, time for those New Year's resolutions and breaking bad habits that have been plaguing you. A Duke University study shows nearly half of everything we do each day is not a conscious decision, just something we do by habit. But as Lori Johnson reports, there's a new technique that can help us take control of our behavior.
Most of us know from experience bad habits such as smoking and eating junk food are hard to break. And good habits like that New Year's resolution to exercise every day are hard to keep. But you're more likely to succeed with a new strategy. Scientists recently uncovered an enormous amount about how habits work in our brains.
Everything we know about the science of habits indicates that any habit can be changed.
In his book, The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg points out each habit contains 3 parts. First, a cue, which automatically triggers us to start. Then comes the routine, which is the behavior itself, followed by the reward, which is what we crave and is the key to our brain remembering that routine in the future.
And everyone from Aristotle to Oprah talks about changing habits, and for years they focused on the routine, on the behavior. But what we've learned is that it's really the cues and the rewards that shape how habits function. And that's how you can change habits, by diagnosing and paying attention to these cues and rewards.
Charles used himself as an example. In his job at the New York Times, he wanted to break his bad habit of eating a cookie in the company cafeteria every afternoon. So that's the routine. First, he identified the cue, which is always one of 5 things: time of day, a certain place, presence of other people, a particular emotion, or something you just did.
And so every day when I had a cookie urge, I would write down those 5 things. Where am I sitting? What am I doing? And I realized pretty soon that the cue was a certain time of day. It always hit between 3:15 and 3:45.
Then he experimented to diagnose the reward. Did it satisfy hunger? No, because after eating a filling apple, he still craved a cookie. Was it getting a break from work? No, because after walking outside, he still craved a cookie. How about interacting with other people? Bingo, because when he socialized, even without food, he felt content.
The cookie had essentially become an excuse for talking to other people. So once I recognized that, once I knew that the cue was a certain time of day, and the reward was the social experience, I could reshape the behavior, the routine. So now every day I stand up at about 3:30 and I look for someone to go have a conversation with, and I walk over to their desk, and then I go back to my desk. And the cookie urge is totally gone. I've changed that habit.
Let's say you want to break your habit of smoking a cigarette every night, and you figured out your cue is finishing dinner, and your reward is feeling relaxed. Now you need to find a better routine that delivers the same reward, such as taking a bath. But what if instead of changing a habit, you'd like to start a brand new one, like daily exercise? In this case, you have to come up with your own cues and rewards, but make sure the reward is something you genuinely enjoy, like listening to your favorite music.
If you go for a run every morning and you tell yourself, I'm going to reward myself by eating kale chips, that is not going to work, because nobody actually likes kale chips, right? On the other hand, there was a study that was done in Germany where they told people, go running in the morning, to start an exercise routine, and when you get back to your house, eat a small piece of chocolate. Now this is counterintuitive, right? Because nobody exercises to eat more chocolate. And yet it worked. Because chocolate is a reward that people actually enjoy.
So by understanding our habits are simply cues followed by a routine, then a reward, we can control our behavior. And as a bonus, the longer we stick with a habit, the easier it becomes. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Up next, a devout young Muslim who had a crisis of faith. See how 3 dreams led this man to Jesus. Since childhood, Nabil Qureshi had been taught that Islam is a religion of peace, and he fervently believed that. But when 9/11 hit, Nabil was a freshman in college. So for the first time, he struggled to reconcile the Islam he saw on his TV screen with the Islam he'd known all his life.
It was really something I had to wrestle with, because at this point, all the talk about Islam being a religion of peace was being confronted with a very vivid visual picture of people being murdered in the name of Allah.
Since childhood, Nabil Qureshi had been a devout Muslim. He was raised in a loving family from a peaceful sect of Islam.
The slogan for the sect is love for all, hatred for none. And so growing up, I was taught to love everyone.
Nabil pursued his faith with rigor. He prayed 5 times a day and memorized the Quran in English and Arabic. He was determined to prove that Islam was the only true faith, especially to Christians.
When I challenged them on the reliability of the Bible, or when I challenged them on the deity of Christ or the crucifixion, when I challenged them on the Trinity, they would have no answer, and they'd begin a very quick retreat into the realm of faith. I just believe on faith. And I'm thinking, well, you're using the word faith the way I use the word ignorance.
Then, in his freshman year of college, he saw another side of his faith.
I have to answer for myself, what is Islam really? Is it what I've been taught? Is it what these guys are proclaiming? And of course, I was sure it was what I had been taught. It was peaceful. But then how do I explain what's happening on the TV?
He wrestled with those images and thoughts for months. Then later that year, he met David, a Christian. Like Nabil, he knew how to defend his faith through logic and reason.
David was able to give me reasons to believe in the Bible, reasons to believe that the Bible hasn't been changed, that it's the inspired Word of God, that the canon of the Bible, the 66 books of the Bible, are actually what should be in the Bible and no other book should be in that collection. He had thought about these things.
Despite the differences, Nabil and David became friends, and over the next 3 years, often debated about religion. Nabil held on to his beliefs, but was running out of arguments.
Whenever I started providing reasons to him, that's when he started pointing things out, flaws in my reasoning.
It became even clearer when he compared the Bible to the Quran and looked closely at the teachings of Muhammad.
It became abundantly clear why people could be so violent in their practice of Islam, because the original teachings of Muhammad, there were some very, very violent teachings found in the traditions of Islam. I'm trying to defend Islam, to my friend who is a Christian. I'm trying to explain to him why Islam is peaceful, why women are given equal rights, all these things that I truly believe now I have to defend. And I'm failing miserably because there just was no defense.
Nabil saw the only logical conclusion was that Jesus is the Son of God. But admitting that went against everything he had ever believed in.
The biggest blasphemy in Islam is to worship anything other than Allah. If there is a chance that Islam could be false, that's a crisis. That's going to shake my world, and it did. And that's what drove me to my knees, and that's when I began to ask, God, who are you?
In the Muslim tradition, Nabil asked God to show him the truth through a dream. God gave him 3. One in particular had a profound effect.
I was standing at the threshold of a narrow door. This door was just wide enough to fit me, just tall enough to fit me. It was the most poignant symbol in the dream, was just how narrow this door was. I could barely fit in it. And on the other side of this doorway was a room that had been set with a feast. I knew that that room was heaven. And I knew that I had to get into that room if I wanted to be in heaven.
Later, he read a passage in the Bible that confirmed his dreams. Convinced of the truth, his world was shattered. Seeking comfort, he reached for the Quran.
I pull out the Quran and I start going through its pages, and it was a rude awakening that there isn't a single verse in the Quran designed to comfort a hurting man. Not one. And so I put it away, I turned to the Bible, I went to Matthew, and it didn't take long for me to get to Matthew chapter 5, and here's what it says. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And so I'm saying to God, God, I know what you want me to do, but I just need time to mourn. I just need time to mourn. I just fell in love with the Bible at that moment. It was as if God had written those words specifically for me. He knew 2,000 years ago that I was going to need comfort in this moment, and He knew that I would go to Matthew, so He put that verse in Matthew for me. And I said, okay, this is real. This is the Word of God. This faith is where the truth is found. And that's when I ultimately, by reading the Bible, accepted Christ.
Nabil started telling people about his new faith, including his parents. He says they were disappointed, but still love their son. He is praying that they will one day accept Christ.
So they can know Him, so that they can be with Him for eternity, so we can all be together for eternity. I can't even imagine, honestly, I can't even imagine going to church with my family. And I would love someday for my father and my mother to be worshiping alongside me. I can't even think about it because I'll just break up.
Today, he works for world-renowned apologist Ravi Zacharias and has a book called Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. He is most grateful for the understanding of truth and the gift of eternal life.
Jesus was able to resurrect from the dead. He has killed death, and this life is all about life. It doesn't end in death. And there's nothing more freeing than that.
Take a moment to pray for Nabil's family that they find truth just like he did. Stay with us. We'll be right back. If you traveled at all during the holiday season, you almost certainly noticed that something made your pocketbook happy: much lower gas prices. Gas prices were at their lowest for Christmas since 2008, and the national average price for a gallon of gas fell below $2 a gallon for the first time since late March in 2009. Analysts expect that gas prices will remain relatively low for the months ahead as well, with gas staying in the $2 range, and that could put some extra money in consumers' pockets. That's it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care about most at cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.